This is the Native Vote, Native Voice podcast. I'm Sean Griswold. Today we're going to find out why this voice from the Sicangu Oyate is vital to Native issues in 2024 and beyond.
You know, we as Natives have been through many massacres, from the Trail of Tears to Sand Creek Massacre. I mean, over and over. But this is the only one where they actually awarded these soldiers with the highest medal of honor, the highest medal in the military that you can get. And they were awarded this for killing unarmed men, women, and children. And so this letter was to set the record straight. We're not changing history. We just want you to remember what the history actually was and do the right thing.
20 U.S. Cavalry soldiers were given the Medal of Honor for their role in genocide at Wounded Knee on December 29, 1890. The high military honor was given after hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children were killed by U.S. Army soldiers on what is now known as the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. The massacre is a historical mark in the genocidal history that carried the United States towards its colonization of North America. As Native News Online publisher Levi Rickert writes, there was no peace on earth for the Lakota that day. Instead, there was unimaginable violence and suffering, compounded by the bitter irony of that banner hanging above the pulpit. It stands as a chilling reminder of the cruelty and Christian hypocrisy faced by indigenous peoples during this era. Now, President Joe Biden can offer some peace to the Lakota people that live with this history by taking away the Medal of Honor from the U.S. soldiers that committed the massacre. As O.J. Semans Sr. explains, Biden signaled support for this effort in 2020. A review of the actions by the U.S. soldiers at Wounded Knee shed more light on the incident and grew more support in D.C. from some members of Congress and Biden's appointees at Interior and Transportation, Deb Haaland and Pete Buttigieg. By following through with an executive action, Biden can separate praise and celebration from an event where hundreds of indigenous people were slaughtered in the South Dakota winter, a step toward healing by honoring the truth. It's a step he can take right now, or lose it on January 20th, 2025, by doing nothing.
Morning coffee, guys.
Morning coffee, right? Take your sip while you can. Okay. O.J. Semans Sr., Levi Rickert, we're here with O.J. to talk about 2024 and the wrap into the final weeks of the Biden administration. We're here on the last day of 2024. It's New Year's Eve. I'm calling in from Albuquerque. We appreciate able to have this conversation with both of you. But to start, O.J., there's a letter that you've written to President Biden. I want you to discuss with us what the letter is and why it's important to talk about right now.
Well, yeah, actually, my wife and I, Barbara, we're co-executive directors for Directions Native Vote. And we've been working with the Wounded Knee descendants for 10 years or so. We've been introducing legislation in the House and the Senate to remove those medals. During that time, during the NDAA, Congress basically told the military to do a review. They went and conducted a review. Once we found out what it was, we were very leery of what was going to happen because they put 3 people, military people from the Department of Defense on it, and 2 people from the Department of Interior. The review was done, which was done haphazardly. They didn't have any military historians on it that actually investigated what happened at Wounded Knee. They didn't take any actual testimony. I know they went to Rap City and they listened to some of the descendants, but that's not really testimony. Then they turned around and they had a vote, and it was 3 from the Department of Defense saying do not remove the medals, and then it was 2 from the Department of Interior said remove all the medals. And we knew that basically the review was fixed to begin with. It's given them an out to say, okay, reviewed it, everything's okay. But even when they're saying that they can do, they're going to do the review on the standards set back in 1890, they still didn't do it because there's a lot of military rules and regulations that were out there then that would show that doing such a thing to massacring so many men, women, and children was definitely against all the rules regulations, and form of conduct by the U.S. military. So they completely ignored that and moved on. So we thought, well, our next step is to ask the person that actually has the authority, and that's President Biden. Uh, we actually met with President Biden back in 2020. Well, not met, but we wrote him a letter when he was running for president. And in that letter, we asked him whether or not he would support the removal of the medals. And it was really a yes or no answer. And he did say yes, but he said the Congressional Medal of Honor is our nation's highest award for gallantry in combat in defense of our nation's highest ideals and principles. That this medal was awarded for the massacre of hundreds of unarmed Native Americans, including women and children, is abhorrent to these very ideals and lessons that the award represents integrity and personal sacrifice for all of those who have received it. And so, he not only said yes, he would support it, but he also described how terrible it was that these military people acted as they did and killed unarmed men, women, and children. So uh, we wrote the letter to remind him of that. We also wrote the letter to say, we're not trying to change history. We're giving you the facts of history, even by General Miles, who was the commanding officer there. And even he stated over and over how horrible it was seeing babies with gunpowder burns on their flesh because the soldiers would walk up to them and put a rifle to them and then pull the trigger. I mean, there is nothing. I don't care how far back you go that would justify that. Now I know we as natives have been through many massacres, from the Trail of Tears to Sand Creek Massacre. I mean, over and over. But this is the only one where they actually awarded these soldiers with the highest medal of honor, the highest medal in the military that you can get. And they were awarded this for killing unarmed men, women, and children. And so this letter was to set the record straight. We're not changing history. We just want you to remember what the history actually was and do the right thing.
Yeah, and OJ, I think it's important to discuss as well in what you and your wife are doing to not only find and to exhibit the truth, find accountable justice here in this space, but also reminding the president of the United States, you committed to this when you came into office. What is now going to be the next steps as we get to the final weeks of President Biden's administration that can help meet that accountability for something that the president said he supported 4 years ago?
Well, not only him, he's got two secretaries. He's got Secretary Transportation Buttigieg that also went on record that he supported the removal. And you have Secretary Deb Haaland, who is still supporting it and knocking on the door, knocking on the cabinet every day saying, hey, we made a commitment. And he's got a Vice President, Kamala Harris, who also supported the removal of these medals. I mean, so he knows it's there. There's no way he can't wake up in the morning and say, I forgot something. This is on his step every day, and somebody knocking on his door. Um, and kind of put this in perspective. On the 134th anniversary of the Wounded Knee Massacre, we lost a very good president, Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter died at 100. So he was born 34 years after this massacre. I mean, so if you put it in perspective, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, the military is trying to hide a massacre of unproportioned. You can't even think of it without getting angry. But let's put it this way: when they did the attack in Israel and they killed all those men, women, and children, the world was up in arms. That happened to us. And then when you look at the retaliation in what's happening in the Gaza, the famine, the destroying of homes and families, that happened to us. And so it may have been 134 years and continually actually to this day, but we don't hear those cries from the people of what happened to us. We have a short term memory. I feel for the Israels. I feel for the Palestinians because we've been there. We're there. And what we're trying to do now is to ensure that at least some of our ancestors and their relatives and descendants can have some justice, some peace, and some healing.
Yeah. OJ, thank you again for sharing all that. And the last question that comes to mind on this topic, um, the urgency of the time and where we are right now, and also what's going to happen when President-elect Donald Trump's administration takes over in Washington. Why is it important for President Biden to sign this now and do this before he leaves office? And what will it do for the work that's been done? Um, if we have to restart all this over again with President Trump.
Well, first of all, Congress has told President Biden, the House and the Senate has told President Biden he has the authority to remove these medals. At one time, people from the U.S. Senate wrote him a letter stating and identifying the authority he has to remove these medals. And prior to that, former President Trump used his authority to do the same thing as far as revoking medals. I mean, so there is precedent. And what's going on now is that we started this so long ago. We had a young lady, I call her young, her name is Marcella LeBeau. She was 100 years old. She was at D Day, she was at Normandy. She was a nurse, a true warrior where she saved lives. Um, and when we started this, we wanted to have this signed off and those medals removed before she passed away. Well, she passed away about a year and a half ago, actually around this time. And we don't know how many other descendants or relatives we're going to lose within the next, this is an Indian country. We don't talk years, we talk days. And we want to ensure that the right thing is done while we have the descendants on this earth instead of making their journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, OJ, you've outlined. I think what's important about what you outlined here is the significant support coming not only from the administration, but all the layers of government. You identified Congress, you identified members of the administration, the president himself. And Levi, I want to now kind of talk with you about it because the interest on this topic is it goes beyond just government. With Native News Online, you have this story front and center, and it gains significant traction. Can you talk about sort of what the audience tells you when you write about these stories, which you have done consistently over the years?
Well, first I want to address something OJ just said, and he mentioned Miss LeBeau. She died at 100. About a year before then, I had the honor of sitting next to her during a dinner at the National Congress of American Indians, and it was an awards banquet. She was honored. I was sitting there with several tribal leaders and Nedra Darling, former spokesperson for the Indian Affairs at the Department of Interior, at her table. She was at the table, and so just to sit in her presence, and then after. I Googled her, right? And I'm going, oh my God, I was sitting next to this legend. It's like, she was so legendary. And what a beautiful person she was at 100. And I asked her, who is she going to vote for? It must have been 4 years, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, I guess. Who she's going to vote for president. She says, I can't tell you. That's something I keep to myself. And but OJ, honestly, I applaud that letter. We ran that story on Native News Online over the weekend. It was our most read story, and it continues to be tracking extremely well. And our readers, by and large, are completely supportive of it. And something that really stuck out when I was editing your letter and writing this story. I love that line that you put in there, you and Barbara put in there, not trying to change history. And I love that because so often I don't know if you're a liberal or not, but so-called liberals, if we're on that opposite side of the far right, we get accused of trying to rewrite history. And I love that. To me, that was a very strong statement. And but I do love the idea that we can go in and correct history, because so often it needs to be corrected, and removing those medals would be a good correction to history. Hey, I do have a question in terms of bipartisan support. How wide is the bipartisan support for this if this is left to Congress? And as Sean alluded to, we argue, Biden's about ready to leave office here in what, matter of days, and so what, 3 weeks or less now. So what's the bipartisan support for this?
It depends on how you look at it. As it's written now, revoking the medals, there is no bipartisan support. Matter of fact, we have
Yikes.
we have Democrats that won't jump on board. Everybody always talks about Democrats, and sometimes I have to remind people that we don't vote by party. We vote by those that are going to take and uplift us and help us, move through generation to generation. And sometimes Democrats just don't cut it. And what we do have is bipartisan, is actually looking at having a full-fledged review, not the clown show that they just put on, where they outnumbered us like they usually do if they want to win, takes and that one has bipartisan support on the House. I mean, on the Senate from the Republicans and the Democrats. So, but honestly, I don't see Congress doing it. We don't have bipartisan support in the bill that's currently there to remove all the medals. We do have bipartisan support in the Senate if we do a full-fledged review, not one like the clown show that we just had where they outnumbered us like they always do. That's the only way they can actually win. And by the way, they never really won. What they usually do is sign a treaty so we won't wipe them out, and then they wait till we get weak, and then they violate the treaty. So I mean, they're pretty smart at that. But moving forward, I don't see Congress doing it. I see it has to be an action done by the president. Uh, Even our friends, the Democrats, apparently they don't feel that massacring men, women, and children and having gunpowder burns on their skin from the close contact of the weapon uh, is not enough to pull those medals. So I'm a little upset with the Congress right now, because the fact is they don't want to see the truth. What they want to see is what their constituents tell them.
That's going to be kind of a good transition into frustrations with Congress and how government's going to be in the next 4 years. Do you have any? Some of the things I'm going to be following in 2025 is coming just off of coverage that we've consistently followed. I think that there's going to be accountability to truth and reconciliation when it comes to the boarding school investigation, and how that's going to play out for either local school districts, local tribes, or even how the federal government will continue to, if it will continue to, provide any type of relief for what it did with that era. There's a lot of places that can work on with education, child welfare, and even local systems I think could be benefited from. That's one I'm following. The other one I'm following as well is into how oil and gas will have a significant role with tribal sovereignty, as well as the role in the U.S. domestic energy policy. That's going to kind of continue seemingly sprinting as it started under Obama into Trump, Biden, and then Trump again. And I think tribal nations are going to have a seat at the table when it comes to that. Some will. Those are going to be two of the major things I'm going to be following when it comes specifically to sovereignty and tribal governments and how they work with this upcoming administration. Any topics on your mind that you're going to be following, or any other ideas that you're looking to focus on as a priority in 2025?
There's a couple of them, but what I want to throw out there real quick is, if you remember, Richard Nixon brought us self-determination. He was a Republican. If you look at the papers for Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, he was actually pushing to give us tax authority over non-Indians on the reservation. Reagan, what he did is he actually proposed to have tribes be able to tax non-Indians on the reservation. And so if you look at a lot of the major issues that we are facing today, they're actually answered by the Republicans. I mean, so there is hope there. And as we go along through life, parties change. I mean, Democrats used to be the ones that supported slavery, going back and forth. So there is hope there. I can tell you that you'll see tribes participating in the inauguration, which we should. No matter what administration is there, we need to be at the table. Number one, to try to protect what we have, and to try to educate those members that really don't have any idea about Indian issues. As far as gas and oil, it depends on where the tribe is. We have tribes that their whole economy is based on gas and oil. We have tribes that do not want that. I mean, so we're going to have to find a happy medium in between moving forward. But when it comes to the boarding schools, we're still having problems with that because they haven't passed the legislation that would give the committee subpoena power. And the reason we need subpoena power is in order to keep and save the records that the Catholic Church has that they're refusing to turn over. And so without that subpoena power, we're exactly where we're at with the investigation to this day. We need that subpoena power, and it hasn't come through in the legislation yet. The other thing that I'm looking in 2025 is the proposed rulemaking on tribally chartered entities. This is really important. Um, what we've been pushing is for tribes to be on the same page as states. That means that if we have tribal businesses, uh, like states have tribal businesses, they're not taxed; they're tax exempt, and that's never been the answer for any country. I mean, any business we had, the state wants to tax this, the federal government wants to tax this. I don't know where people, oh, Indians don't pay taxes. Um, that's totally not true. I mean, everybody and their mother wants to tax us as we go along.
Hey, OJ, let me interrupt you. My mother used to just hate it when she said they say we don't pay taxes, and that just made her angry.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
yeah. I mean, everybody and their mother is going to want to tax us. I mean, that's just a given. But what this does, and it's a regulation 113628-1, and we fought very hard for this, is to exempt tribe and tribal businesses from being taxed by the IRS. And the reason that we're looking at this so hard, like I'm also the executive director of Coalition of Large Tribes. These are treaty tribes, and the treaty tribes never agreed with the United States government on these types of taxes. And so what we're exerting back there is our treaties and our sovereignty down the United States government, that they need to honor the treaties and treat us on the same level as they treat the states. So that's one of the big issues I'm looking at. Matter of fact,
OJ, where are we with that? Where are we with that? Because I remember when you sent that over to me, we ran a story, and obviously it would save tribes millions and millions of dollars. I, and last I knew, it was at public comment period. Is that where it still is,
yeah,
or where are we with that?
it it was January 7th, but they moved it up to January 21st. And what's really important about public comment is you're going to get a lot of public comments saying that this rule isn't any good. And so every tribe, and understand this, you don't have to be an elected official in order to comment. And so any
True.
person and this is even with non-Indians that work for tribally owned businesses, that they can put in comments that would support this rule and regulation that would take away the power of IRS to tax their businesses. Now, tribal owned business with a non-tribal owned business is it's still out there for taxation, but a one tribe working with another tribe would fall under that same category where they would be tax exempt. I mean, this of all the legislation going forward, economic development wise, this is the best thing that could happen for tribe since 1934. So I mean, this really is a big deal, and
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
I'm hoping
Yeah.
tribes and tribal members and people that work for tribal companies are aware of this and do a comment. It don't have to be, a thesis. It can be, I support this. That's, simple as that.
Well, OJ, since your letter was such a resounding success, why don't you get me an op-ed so we can run it in Native News Online, and then hopefully make sure it's intact? Because I remember when you sent me your email, and I think you texted me said this is a big deal, and when I looked at it, I said OJ's right, this is a real big deal. So thank you for your hard work on that.
Oh, well, I like to take the credit, but I work with a lot of smart people.
Hey, that's why Sean's here. I used to work with Sean.
I know, Levi,
He's
we're
scary.
actually smart. We get smart people.
That's right. That's right.
And it's important for us to share that information. Seriously, OJ, just what you shared right there, somebody else is going to hear that and be like, that guy's smart. He knows what he's talking about. So there's layers to this, and I think that's going to be important for us as journalists and working with Native News Online. I say us here right now in this circle, but that's what I think is also going to be important when it comes to anything when it in terms of growing our tribal communities, our sovereignty. All of that really requires us to be educated in a basic sense of these are the things happening. Here's a public comment period that can ultimately affect your life and the the health of your tribe for years to come. And it's a process within the federal government that you can participate in right now. So yeah, I think that's going to be very important to help anybody understand all that will be happening as rapidly as it does. Here's a little bit of basic information.
Well, Sean, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell the audience what Native News Online. We have a new tagline going into 2025, and that is warrior journalism defending tribal sovereignty. Warrior journalism defending tribal sovereignty, and I think I've been giving a lot of thought, and I think that sometimes I think Native Americans, and I'll talk collectively, we fall short when it comes to our messaging, and it's like we react to events, policies coming out of DC. It's time for us to really be preemptive and proactive and get out in front of some of these stories and be the warriors that our ancestors were, and we're still warriors. So we're all warriors, and we're fighting every day. And one thing I will say about it, warrior does not necessarily depict a negative. Sometimes, because someone, when we were toying with this idea of warrior journalism, like, is that negative? I'm going, warriors are not necessarily negative. It's just like, hey, warriors do a lot of great things for society, and it's fighting for us in a lot of good ways. And our ancestors, they were warriors in that they helped kept their families fed, right? And hey, I'll throw in a little thing that really bugs me. A lot of fathers need to make sure they're taking care of their kids. So that's I don't care what color you are, red, yellow, purple, in between. You need to take care of your kids, fathers. So OJ, what do you think about that warrior journalism concept?
It's the core of who we are. I mean, warriors are the basis of our society throughout Indian country. And warriors, again, doesn't mean, that we're going into battle. Even today, I tell you, you want to be a warrior, we're not doing it with bows and arrows. We're doing it with a pin and checking a box. I mean, as time moves on, the actual concept of a warrior changes. I mean, I said it earlier. Marcella was a warrior. She was a warrior, a true warrior. She saved lives. In an Indian country, what you look at is the fact is Indian country respects life. And because we respect life, we also understand that we're willing to move on to the spirit world when it's time. So warrior in our culture has so many different meanings, but it's always one of positive for the people. So I totally like what you're doing. You know, when I communicate, I tell people, you know, what you need to do, you quit listening to what I say and start doing what I think. No, I'll never make a journalist.
I think that's the old ways that we've also been taught. Just keep doing it and do as I watch. Watch me and I'll show you how to do it.
Hey, Sean, let me slip in one more question to OJ before we have to go. OJ, we're coming up on the end of the Biden-Harris administration. And with the end of the Biden-Harris administration, so ends the tenure of Deb Haaland as the Secretary of the Interior. What are your thoughts? How did she leave her mark on the Interior?
You know, first of all, you want to talk about a lawyer. There's a little bit of history behind Deb. First of all, when she ran for Congress, she was the one that jumped in there with Senator Warren and started the Truth and Healing legislation way back in the 2020. And she also started the legislation, the push for removing those medals of honor awarded for that massacre.
I, for one, I'm going to miss her. I'm going to miss her at Interior.
Well, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of her in the next several years. And I think that's what's going to be exciting about Secretary Haaland's role is the work that she put into that, how she continues that in other roles in service, in public service specifically. Cool. OJ, Levi, any last thoughts before we head into 2025?
No, but this has been fun, and Happy New Year to everyone out there who's listening to this. And it's going to be an interesting ride in 2025, and we're going to monitor. Hey, I was going to say this real before we go. You said, ask OJ what he's going to monitor. I tell you what, I'm going to monitor, who I'm going to monitor. That Tim Sheehy up in Montana, who was the candidate at the time, now he's elected, Republican candidate who was caught on audio tape saying that he goes with the Crow tribe, they're all drunk at 8 a.m. And so I'm hoping they do not put him on the Committee on Indian Affairs. If so, I think Indian country needs to be in an uproar. I'm going to be monitoring that man this year. And I'm going to direct my staff to do that when I'm on vacation and not elsewhere or doing something else. But that's who I'm going to monitor this year.
Yeah. Congress will be something else to watch. You say that, I say John Thune. I'm going to put one more name out there. See what South Dakota senator is going to do. Okay. He apparently says he understands the budgetary process and how it'll affect Native American people in this country. I'm curious to see how he's going to interact with the president, who maybe not learning about this stuff for the very first time. A lot of interesting things to watch. OJ, Levi, we're all going to be there. We're going to have people behind us as well to do our best to inform everybody and let Indian country know what's going on. I'm excited for 2025, and I really appreciate that we can have this conversation here, because this is what builds that excitement. I think we have good people working behind us. As you mentioned, I feel like I'm in a room with some smart people here, and that's part of where the excitement grows. So thank you both. We'll see you next year.
Chi Miigwech, everyone. Yes.
Elekwa. That wraps up our show. Elekwa. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Native Vote, Native Voice podcast. You can catch all 7 episodes on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, streaming live and always. Available to download when you need something to listen to on the dusty roads where cell phone service doesn't go. The Native Vote, Native Voice podcast is produced by Native News Online with some funding support from the MacArthur Foundation, the National Congress of American Indians, and 4 Directions. Until next time, see you again.